The most important thing to remember is a tick issue is not a 911 issue. It's an 811 issue. A photomicrograph or electromicrograph of a female black-legged tick. We used to call them deer ticks. We don't call them deer ticks. Ooh, thank you. You keep your hands to yourself. Now, several things to note on the picture. Number one is they got 8 legs as adults because they're more closely related to spiders and mites. Number two, they don't have a head, and that's really important because there's some mythology out there. We'll talk about the mythology too. So essentially, they don't have a head. They smell with their feet, as versus us. We have smelly feet. They only have one little bit and piece that goes in through the skin, which is this little piece in the front. These palps on either side are used to help hold it in place, but they actually cement in place, and we'll cover that. And essentially, that's a lovely female. And you'll see the difference between males and females. Because ticks go through several stages in life. They start as an egg, they go through a larval and a nymph stage, then become adults. And half the adults are males, half the adults are females. Adult males do not feed. See, so immediately, although you may find a tick on you, if it's a male, it's not an issue. And it's very easy to tell them apart. So first of all, what have we got here for tick species? We are blessed with biodiversity of ticks. Most people say our biodiversity is going down. Oh, we're doing good. We have 14 species that are established and here in the province. Established means that we've confirmed that we have all life stages, and if you go back to the same spot, you can determine which they are. You'll notice the top 4 are separate. Those are the most common ones that we have, and the most likely ones you're going to come in contact with. So that one on the top, called rabbit tick, we don't have rabbits, we have hares, but they call them rabbit ticks. They're very small, and I have an image of one in the next slide, I think, or 2 slides. So you might not even see them. They're about the same size as the smallest forms of the others. But the next 3, the wooded opt tick, the black-legged tick, and the groundhog ticks are the ones that you're most likely to come in contact with. And they're very easy to identify. You don't need fancy optics. Now, I'm not supposed to talk about going to a particular place to buy stuff. But there's this neat shop up the road, and it rhymes with All-A-Rama. And there, all over the quarter, you can get a magnifying glass, 5-fold magnifying glass, and it's optical quality glass. It's a cheap plastic candle, but with something like that, that's all you need to identify it. We used to call these things deer ticks. They changed the common name. Deer is just a host upon which you find them, but it's not what they call a reservoir. It's actually a dead-end host. We're dead-end hosts for ticks. If we get bitten by a tick that has Lyme, no other tick can pick it up from us. So we're kind of the tail end there. So people eat deer, so we call them black-legged. Mind you, we had something called codworm here. Remember that? Well, they figured people eat cod, so let's call them seal worm instead. Well, hold on, we eat seal too. So anyway, so please don't bug around with the common names, because just let them stay the way they are. Generally speaking, what the words that you see for the common name indicate the species it was collected on when it was originally described. So you can see we got 4 common ones, and the other ones are here, like the moose tick or winter tick. We have them in a couple spots in the colloquids, but the rest are relatively poorly distributed. The European, they used to call it the European sheep tick. It's actually a genuine sheep tick. What they call sheep ticks here aren't actually ticks, they're wingless flies. And that one is very closely related to the black-legged tick, and in Europe and Asia, that can also transmit Lyme. And that's actually an urban tick. But the other ones here, we do see from time to time. So this one, the Lone Star tick, you'll see that one coming up in the press from time to time, because it could potentially carry a disease called Powassan virus, which if people get affected by it, there's a possibility that you can develop an allergy to red meat. Okay, and because of that, that's quite frightening. It is present, that species and that disease is present in southern Maine, but it's not present here. Every time we hear of a report, we follow it up, and all cases but one, which we haven't been able to confirm, they've turned out to be dog ticks that were just misidentified. There is one case in around Milford, where somebody took a photograph and it's clearly that species, but we've not been able to confirm where it was. So these things come in with people who've been traveling. Most common ones, are these four. So these are girls, they're all females. So you can tell is the females have this shield-like structure on the front, and I'll explain that in a moment. That's the rabbit tick there. The dividers here are 1 millimeter in size. You can see that is only just a shade over 1 millimeter, so it's not very large. And they're also, unlike the other ones, these are adults, it's almost cylindrical, so it looks quite different. It almost looks like a mite more than anything else. This is the one that's most common. It moved through here, appeared here probably about 15 years back within the general area. It's called the wood tick or the dog tick. And it's too bad we weren't doing this last Thursday, which was talk like a pirate day, because they got these features back here, they call them their festoons. Anyway, so the diagnostic features we use on that, and you notice the shield, just called the scutum. It's got the creamy marks on it. And the other thing on the front, the palps, they're short and stumpy. The little rabbit ticks are short, stumpy ones, but they have a little projection on the side. We're keeping an eye open on those ones because there's an Asian tick that was introduced into the mid-states in the Carolinas. And that one, I forget what it carries. It does carry a disease, but so we're keeping eyes open for that. So anyways, that's the common one. That's the black-legged tick here. And you notice general features. These are all unfed. Look at the palps on the top. They're long and thin. It's the only one that we have that is long and thin. The shield on the back is perfectly circular and black. And an unfed animal, this is an unfed female, you notice it's actually a bright orange color. And we use that, not just the color, but also how that color changes with time to determine how long the animal's been feeding. And we can determine if the animal has not fed and how long it's fed for, to a degree. This one is patchy, but it's probably widespread in the province. That's the groundhog tick. And you notice the shield on the back is almost triangular. They call it subangular. And you pick it up, you say, groundhog tick, by the way. That really stands out quite clearly. And you look at the palps, they're short and club-like, so they're quite rounded. And so they're very easy to determine them one from the other. So that's, in one way, that's very useful. But you're most likely to come across one of these ones, whether it's on you or whether it's on your pet. This is the Lone Star tick. And this is the one I point out. It's easy as sin to identify. This is an adult female, and you can see there it's got the shield. It's actually quite brown. It's got fairly long palps, but it's got that. It's not bird shit. Okay, that's actually a mark on it right there. Diagnostically, the males look quite different, but the females look like that. So if you see that, that's the one we're keeping an eye open for. If you see that, let your vet know, let your doctor know, give us a buzz. Male, female. These are adults with an adult male. Doesn't matter what the tick is. It's got that shield. It's called a scutum. It covers the whole body completely. With the female, it doesn't matter what the species is, whether it's fed or not fed, that shield only covers the front part. So it doesn't matter which species it is. So if you spot one like that, immediately you know it's a male. And the other thing is, you know, it hasn't fed. So if it's got on you, it's useful to know what it is. But from the point of view of possible disease transmission, it doesn't do anything. Now, this is the black-legged tick here, and its life stages. Now, black-legged ticks, BLT. Ever hear that in a place? This is really neat, because the people at that shop where they sell BLTs get a little bit annoyed, because when they hatch out an egg, they hatch into what's called a larva. Its maximum size is about the size of a poppy seed. You know, like the buns you get when you get your BLTs. It does not carry any disease. It cannot, because it hasn't fed. There's no transmission of disease from an egg to that first stage. That animal, so if you find that one on yourself or on a pet, it's useful to know what it is, but it doesn't matter from the point of view of what impact it can have. That will feed on a host, and that host, if that host is infected, that's when it picks up the disease. But as it feeds on a host, it then transfers to the next stage, which is called a nymph, which is the size of a sesame seed. Get it? Poppy seed, sesame seed, BLTs. So this is the first stage. If you've got something like that feeding on you, if it's a black-legged tick, and it has fed on an infected host, that it can potentially transfer the disease. Not necessarily, but potentially. Now, so this animal will feed, get a blood meal, and then it will transform into either a female or a male. Now notice with black-legged ticks, the males look quite different than the females. Those have long, thin palps, short, stumpy ones. But these are quite characteristic in that when you look at them, you can see that pale margin around the edge. So you can see that with your eyes. You don't need any microscope or anything like that. So these are the ones that really we look for. And the other thing is, when we get into the feeding side, notice these little, you get a bit of shadow in here. You get those 4 little shadowy marks. You want to get back into that, because that will show you or give you a hint as to how long the animal's been feeding. The basic life history is the tick that you picked up, the adult tick that you picked off your dog, either this fall or next spring, actually came from eggs 2 years ago. So it takes 2 years to reach the final stage. Eggs that were laid this spring will have transformed into larvae. Those larvae will feed on a host, but because they're very small, the hosts they have are very low down in the ecosystem, so it tends to be small birds. It tends to be things like mice and voles and shrews. And in actual fact, it's those animals, the small rodents, that are the reservoir of disease. The other animals may carry the disease, but they're not as important. So once it's transformed, it's fed, it will transform sometime. It may transform in the fall, or it may transform the following spring into a nymph. That nymph will then go to feed, and you can see the sizes or types of hosts are larger because they can climb higher up in the vegetation. And then, of course, they will make it through the summer and transfer into adults, which will feed anytime from now until next spring and lay eggs in the spring. Now, we are already starting to pick up some adults already from this last year. And I think it's because we had those 6-7 weeks of really, really hot weather. Normally, we wouldn't be seeing many adults around. But people used to say, hey, June, okay, tick season's over, game over. Well, actually, the reason is because by June, the eggs have been laid and those animals have died, so you tend not to see them. But as you can see from this image, we've still got larvae and nymphs present. So every season is tick season. That's the good news. Good take-home message. In the winter, it's a little bit better. We live up in the Old Shore, great place. No mosquitoes, summer or winter, especially winter. But in here, essentially, the temperature is about 4 degrees centigrade. They're active. So we've got ticks from all months of the year. And just because the air temperature is running high, running very, very cold, doesn't mean that we don't have warmer temperatures. You're probably seeing, well, the place you see the cold feet growing first thing in the spring, along road edges, in ditches, and by the side of the house, first place for dandelions. Those temperatures are high even in the wintertime. It's called a microclimate. So anyways, every season is tick season, and that's useful to know. We've been studying the dog tick, or the wood tick, quite extensively. They were introduced to Shelburne County in 1896 with hunting dogs, and then essentially started spreading. So in 1940, the museum started doing studies, trapping for them, looking to see where they were. So that was the distribution in 1940, and you can see in the next 10 years how the core distribution is still there, but they've spread. Now, if I was a tick, by the end of my life, I maybe would have made it to the end of the table. They don't go far. But these distances are substantial, so that actually tells us where the hosts have gone and how far they've gone in that period of time. So the hosts can be, well, at that time it could have been deer, potentially could have been moose, foxes, and foxes will actually distribute quite substantially, quite quickly, especially the males. Actually, we're end of September right now, so coyotes, you got coyotes around. This is the time of the year that they boot all the young males of the year out, and they form packs, and they start traveling quite a bit too. So they can quite readily go 40, 50 kilometers. So in this case, 10 years gives you that, another 10 years gives you that. So you can see they're radiating out from that initial distribution until they hit the sea. And here, then you also start picking them up on islands. Ticks can't swim, but deer can. So at that point, then the following, piss off, pardon my French. There. So by 1985, we're picking up something else. So essentially, we're shifting up the axis of the province, heading to the north and the east. And here, we're starting to pick up another pattern. These, in the military, we call these communications corridors, so highways. So that's the Chester Road, or the Windsor Forks Road. That's the 103, the 101. And so that was the general pattern. By 2004, guess who's moving them? Okay, it's people. People by road, people by dogs, people by traffic. Now, can you spot those little red dots all over the place? Any idea what they are?
Where people drove to.
Sorry?
Where people drove to?
Yeah, it's a roadside picnic parks. Okay? Quick, stop, the dog's got to have a pee. Well, the dog's not the only one. Now, how do they get established and how do they spread from there? Well, they have to have a host. It's generally a small host, so whether it's red squirrels, whether it's deer mice, white-footed mice, it doesn't really matter. It's a mammal host. They can be carried by birds. Birds are a little bit warmer body temperature than most mammals are. So because of that, in a way, they give a stronger signal for the ticks to be able to pick up. So, when were they first reported? How did they get here? We figure migratory birds. Remember the original one? We had a single spot and they were radiating out from that. Oof. Okay, so within that period of time, and then most of these are actually from 2004 to 2006. The Department of Health and Wellness has been monitoring and they're providing information on distribution. They have a website that has a lot of good links, useful information on it. And also they can get the link to the Center for Disease Control out of that as well. The original mapping they had showed these areas, these zones. They said if you're within this zone, you have the possibility of encountering a black-legged tick with disease. Now the reason is because those are areas where they confirmed through field sampling that the ticks were there, they're established, and based on health department records that people were diagnosed as having positive Lyme in those areas. Medium or moderate means that you've got established ticks, but no confirmed disease, although even by that point, see, they still weren't picking that up. And then they don't say there's zero risk, but low risk, because we haven't confirmed established ones. Now, as of this spring, end of April, they modified that map, and they backfilled. Now, in actual fact, if they're going to do that, they should have included Geisler as well, because there are confirmed things. So this is still the current mapping that they've got available on their website. Each species looks for its prey, and it's like this. It's got its front feet. You'll see it moving. You can play with ticks. It's actually quite fun. Because you can put down a piece of paper, you can kind of put your finger in there, and it'll wave around and turn towards you and start moving. You can play over there. You don't need an animal care permission for that. But the point is that they're interacting with you, and in this case, they call that questing. So they're questing for food. It's very much like a mosquito or a black fly or a deer fly or moose fly does. So they're looking to see if there's a host. If there is, they'll orient towards it. They're going to climb up a piece of tall grass or short shrubberies for Monty Python fans, and then they'll do this. And if a possible host comes by, they get knocked off, they'll loosen up a grab, and they start climbing into feeding position. So the whole aim is to minimize the number of times they have to climb. It's the feet are the important things because that's how they sense. When they're questing with these receptors they have on their feet. And just before I talk about the receptors, when they're walking along, you see them moving along you, no problem, whatever, you can flick them off, whatever. You try to pick them up, they grab you. Okay, they're not attached. What they do, especially if you work in the woods, they got these dogs, and they just dog the claws in until you let go, until you back off, and then they pull them back out and keep on walking. They're walking on their wrists or their ankles. So it's kind of a neat thing. If they're on a smooth surface, they have a pad here that allows them to stick to it. But as soon as that distraction disappears, then they'll just go back to walking along. But here is their sensory pit. Okay, it's called a Haller's organ. And what they do with that sensory pit, they have hairs. The sensory hairs can detect a number of features, chemical features and physical features. And they have done the work to determine which portions of the Haller's organ detect which types of compounds. The point is, they detect both chemical and physical cues. Chemical cues, they can smell carbon dioxide, they can smell ammonia, they can smell lactic acid. So if you're going to exercise, your muscles get sore because you've just been exercising too much for a little bit. That's lactic acid, that comes out through the skin. And that's what mosquitoes go for. You use DEET, for example, you see the mosquitoes all around you, they don't land on you because they come in close, they smell the CO2 and everything, but they can't detect lactic acid. So anyway, so lactic acid, and then physical cues, temperature, they're not going to go after cold prey, and they're also looking for relative humidity and moisture. So everything we do when we're sweaty. This is a cut-through section to show you the internal anatomy of a tick. This is a black-legged tick, and essentially they feed by drawing blood in through the hypostome, essentially the feeding tube, and it goes down to the midgut. Now, if the animal has not been infected, then it's not an issue. It will basically fill the midgut, and then those gut contents then will allow it to ripen the eggs, and it'll carry on. However, if it has been infected at a previous stage, this midgut section is where the Lyme bacteria, this is bacteria, resides, and it starts to reproduce. It's there in low concentration to begin with, and the more it feeds, well, first thing you see, remember those little dark spots? See these you got these 4 little batches of tubes here coming through. As it increases in numbers, then it migrates through the gut wall into what they call the hemocoel, or the gut cavity, and then is concentrated in the salivary glands. And at that point, as they feed, they then inject it into their holes. Now, as the Lyme bacterium concentrates within the salivary glands, then it is injected. So it takes a while to get enough concentration of the Lyme bacterium in the gut to transmit in there and to have an impact, which is why if you go on the website, for example, the Department of Health and Wellness or CDC, they indicate you have to be attached and feeding for at least 36 hours. And I checked the veterinary sites, and it seems to be fairly parallel for animals as well. Other animals, we're animals too. Remember people say, oh, the thing just burrowed right into me. I don't know, one little thing got into you. Okay, it's just going through the skin. And so this one has been attached somewhere between 48 to 72 hours. And you can see that's still all that's inside there, but you see how the back is no longer orange? You can no longer see the gut contents as well. So this animal, if you have something like this on you or on a pet, then that's something to be a little bit concerned about, because it's been attached long enough to transmit the bacteria if it has it. Okay? So the point is that you can determine how long an animal's been on you or on your pet by its appearance. Isn't she gorgeous? I mean, that's just home life. You know, I'm surprised Better Homes and Gardens doesn't have that. So she's had a good feed. The thing with black-legged ticks, they're one of the shortest attached species, meaning that they're only attached for up to about 72 hours in order to feed, and then they let go. There's a myth out there as to how to remove them. So this is an unfed animal. You see where the plates are, just back of the legs, okay? And if you look at it more closely, almost, you can see how all the individual tubes have come out, and each of them's got that little bit of oil on them, okay? So what were you supposed to do in the older days to remove a tick? Cover them up. You cover them up, and of course it blocks all the tubes, and after several minutes, they let go and they fall off, and you win. You block the tubes up, and if it's half fed or fully fed, they go, and it uses the gut contents into you. So even if you haven't had, even if it's not a positive one for Lyme, you're getting all the bacteria and everything else coming back into you. So if you want to cut it off at that point and remove it. And there's some fine, are they yours? The handy dandy removal tools? Yeah. Brought to you by our fine people at Fund Vets who are not paying me because they didn't ask for any money. I'll show you the devices that I used before. Why are they hard to get off you if you have them on you? This is a dog tick, and this is a black-legged tick. With the dog tick, remember I mentioned they have the palps sticking on either side. They secrete a biocement. That biocement is made of collagen, so that's sort of the basic element that we have in our bones and in other connective tissues, but without the calcium. And it is a cement that is fully active until you reverse it. With these guys, they put a lot of it right at the base underneath the thing. So if you pull a dog tick, you usually get a little bit of a patch of skin off at the same time. With the black-legged ticks, sometimes we have people coming in, can't get it off, and they're pulling, and of course the skin's coming way out. They secrete the cement on the inside within the skin itself. So that's why that's a little bit more difficult to remove that way. When they finish feeding, this is of course obvious, only the females, because the males don't. You know what the males are doing? That 3-letter word. Yeah, they go up to where they figure the females are going to be on the body, and they attach loosely. When the female goes by, they let go and they mate. So the males don't use this as an attachment mechanism at all. But once the females have finished feeding, they have a releasing agent, which then dissolves the biocement, and poof, off they go. There is great interest in what is that biocement exactly? So there's work being done in Vienna at the moment. They have synthetic skin, It pries them up, it gets those palps out of there, and off they come. And you notice that the guts are down below, so you're not squeezing the guts as well. There was another old wives' tale. Talk about old husbands' tales. I suspect that's coming. You'll notice that there's some samples out there. They're the ones where you twist the animals. I said, don't use those because you twist them, they get dizzy and then they break up. They don't have a head. No head, no ears, no inner ear. You don't get dizzy by being twisted. So people tell you stuff, and you say, that's nice. I'll have to look that up. But that not how it works. So the aim of the game is you basically cut them off. The kind of stuff that you might see on an individual is you might see a rash, but you notice the size here. So basically the diagnostic feature is anything more than 45 millimeters or 4.5 centimeters, which is like about 2 inches. Anything bigger than that, you should be suspicious. Now, is it a risk? Yeah, it's a manageable risk. What do you do? Relatively straightforward. Now, I'm not demeaning Lyme. Lyme is a serious issue, especially if it's not diagnosed and not treated. But you can minimize your risk. First of all, is you apply what they call repellents. Another urban myth, they're not repellents. Remember we saw those pictures of the legs with the Haller's organs? It's the same thing with mosquitoes with their antennae. They're not repelling, they're blocking their ability to sense the chemicals. So this worked really good this summer, didn't it? Yeah. Okay, 7 weeks, everybody, tuck them in, do yourself up there. So do a check when you come in, because it takes them usually 12 to 24 hours to get up into a feeding position. And in this case, that's a dog. What's wrong with that? There. And then the other thing is, do a check the following day.